Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Alrighty. Welcome once again to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. I am, as always, your host, Duck. If at any point it looks like I'm having a spasm like this, it's because there's a fly that's been buzzing me like half the day here. It's a hot, muggy day today. It's pretty warm in my studio here, and I've been running around like a crazy man, so I built up a bit of a sweat, and I think that's what attracted this fly to me. So I've been trying to get it all day long. So I apologize if I do some crazy arm movements, because you've been there, right? You know what it's like. Okay. All right, today is Photoshop edition, but before we get into that, I need to make an announcement. Actually, let me go ahead and switch this over. Originally, the local chapter of ASMP, in conjunction with CTPPA, it was going to be holding a workshop on drones tomorrow evening, but because of the impending bad weather, we're supposed to be having some rain. Obviously, you can't fly in the rain, so they are postponing it until next Wednesday, the 23rd. Not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. And I know Alan had signed up, my videographer had signed up, and a few others. So if you know anybody that wanted to go but couldn't because of the date, just let them know that it's been postponed and maybe they can attend next Wednesday. All right, so that's that for that. Oops, let's turn that off. Okay. We've covered quite a bit with Photoshop and with Lightroom over the past couple of years. So those of you who've been with me that whole entire time, first of all, thank you for hanging in there. And hopefully that at this point, you've gotten a lot out of it and you have a lot of tools at your disposal to be able to kind of at least, improve on your editing skills through Photoshop. One of the things that I've tried to do up to this point is kind of keep it to, I don't want to say the lowest common denominator because that just doesn't sound right. But in essence, I've been trying to really exploit the easier tools within Photoshop that allows you to really, really do a lot with your editing. Of course, one of my favorite tools is the curves adjustment tool. And in the past, I've shown you the power of the curves adjustment tool by doing a complete edit using just curves adjustments and obviously local selections and things like that. And then very recently, we started getting into understanding a little bit more into how middle gray is utilized not only on the camera side with our photography, being the middle gray is what the camera kind of wants to expose for, and how you can utilize that middle gray to control your exposure one way or the other. Those of you who attended the flash photography class that I had a short time back, this was reinforced in that class as well. And of course, for those of you who are my Patreon members, we had the Patreon only session on Blend If. where it really utilizes that 50% gray. Blend if dark, blend if light, based on that 50% gray. So today we're just going to take it one step up from there. And what I want to talk about today is frequency separation. Frequency separation. This is a more advanced technique that some people kind of shy away from because it looks so complicated. But hopefully now you've gotten a good enough understanding of how that 50% gray works. So hopefully, you know, with that in the bag, frequency separation won't be as scary. All right? You ready for it? Okay. Now, before starting the recording, you guys saw me kind of like pulling my hair out because, let me explain. One of the things that I do to make my workflow go quick is that I build in a lot of automation. All right. And in Lightroom, I automate a lot of the things with the import dialog, the export dialog, and some editing presets that I use all the time. It just takes a series of steps, combines it into one, and so with one click, it does all those steps, and I don't have to worry about it. It's the same thing with Photoshop. I have a bunch of actions that I have developed, tweaked and developed and or incorporated into my work. And I have it programmed into my Stream Deck. All right, if you guys don't know what a Stream Deck, hopefully I can reach the camera. This is a Stream Deck. It's connected by USB to my computer, and it's a series of programmable buttons. All right, so for example, while on this Zoom meeting, I can switch screens. I can go to the desktop. This is what we'll be using today. Okay, I can you know, go back to this screen, you know, talking about this is a Photoshop edition. And of course, when I'm chatting with you guys, I utilize this screen. So what I'm doing is I'm just pressing one button and it does a series of actions behind the scene that does all that fancy graphics and switching around and all that good stuff. The nice thing about that particular tool, and there's that friggin' fly. God. One of the things about that tool is that it is very customizable. And can you guys see it? Did you see it? It's buzzing. God damn it. It's buzzing me. All right. That thing is like this big. I don't know if you guys can see it. All right. Anyway. Or what's, oh yeah, programmable buttons. So that means I can program it with a bunch of I can program a bunch of the buttons with different actions. So once I build an action in Photoshop, instead of going to the Actions tab, scrolling down for whatever action I need, and then clicking play, I can program it into this little box, and with a press of a button, it will launch the action for me, and I don't have to think about it. All right. So what happens is, damn, missed. What happens is, after a while, you forget the steps that you used to build the action because, you know, why think about it? Except when it comes time to teach it. So here I was trying to recall the steps for this friggin' action that I want to teach you today, and in the process I screwed something up. And anyway, I got it fixed, but I don't know the steps. I don't recall the steps. So maybe we'll discover them as we go through this. All right. But anyway, if you look up frequency separation on on the internet, you're going to find a bunch of stuff. All right. Pix Imperfect has one that you can download. Flern, if you follow him, Aaron Ace, he has one. I think that's the one I'm going to be using today because in order to correct what I did, I loaded his up. And just about every YouTuber has their version, which is pretty much a copy of everybody else's. The steps are fairly simple, but what we're going to do is we're just going to go into the weeds of how to use it. And if we get a chance to learn how to build it, then awesome. Actually, you know what? What I'll do is playback options. I will go step by step. All right. Okay. Oops. Ooh, something is wrong here on my desktop. Zoom. Nope. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Okay, something's going wrong here. Display. Hold on. Something else broke here. What is going on here? Okay, we can get rid of that. Presenter camera. There we go. There we go. Now I'm back. I think. Okay. All right. So what is frequency separation? Okay. By this time you understand that there's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek little test that I ask people. It's kind of like one of those questions that, it's kind of like a trick question. And the question is, does your camera take color pictures or black and white pictures? Okay. And of course, somebody who's not very familiar with photography will say, oh, my camera takes color pictures. I look at the back of the camera and I can see in the display, it's looking at me. It's in full living color. Okay. But if we actually break it down to the actual technology, the answer is actually no, it's taking black and white images. In essence, it's taking 3 images with 3 different color filters in front of it to filter out a certain color spectrum. And it's the combination of all 3 that gives us that color information. Okay. So in essence, whenever we do any kind of editing in Photoshop, what we are doing is we are manipulating the underlying black and gray images, all right, which then alters the math between all 3 images to give us a new color. Okay. We can take kind of that premise and we can say, okay, we can separate a particular channel, all right, and we can use the information from that channel in order to create, for example, a mask. All right. So we can take the red channel and we can create a mask in order to be able to use it to manipulate certain parts of our image. And that's usually how things like exposure blending can be done. Not going to get into that, but we can also say, okay, how else can we manipulate this image? And it says, well, if we understand that there are certain blend modes that operate on that 50% gray, all right, such as the overlay or the screen mode, okay? If you ever use the overlay or screen mode, you know that anything brighter than 50% gray is going to lighten our image, and anything darker than 50% gray is going to darken the image. Everybody understands that, correct? All right. It's the basic principle for dodging and burning, which we went over not too long ago. Okay. So now, if we take it a step forward and it says, you know what? If we can extrapolate edge detail, all right, because if actually, you know what? Here's a great way to illustrate it. Hold on, give me a second. Where is my Lightroom? Okay. In Lightroom, if we go to Develop Module and we go down to Detail, all right, where we have our sharpening mask, okay, right below that, okay, and you know what, I am, for some reason, not working properly here. I must have done something wrong, of course. Anyway, all right, if we go to our masking area, there, to our sharpening area, we can sharpen by amount, radius, detail, and there's a slider called masking, all right? And if we manipulate any of those, it really doesn't seem to do very much of anything, okay? But if we use it in conjunction with the Alt button or the Option button for you people who are on Macs, all right, if we press and hold the Alt button and then move like the amounts, not the amount, the masking, all right, you'll see the viewfinder will change to kind of like this black and white image. All right, and if it looks familiar, it should. This is a mask, just like Photoshop would use a mask. All right, except we are manipulating this mask live based on the edge detection of Lightroom. All right, so if we increase the masking, you'll see that it gets tighter and tighter and tighter on the more noticeable edges. Okay. Now, if we look up here, you can see this is a white camera shot against a white background. So the edge transition here is kind of vague because there's not a lot of contrast between this edge. So when we are looking at that masking edge, you'll see that it kind of loses it in this area. All right? Because Lightroom is not finding a very definitive edge. But if we look here, where there are very defined edges, all right, and I press the Alt Option key, all right, we can see that we can manipulate that mask. If we apply a little bit of masking, we can see that it's picking up a lot of that digital noise. And if we increase it, we're starting to get away from that digital noise and just coming into the edge. Okay? Now, the reason I bring this up is because when we do a frequency separation, it's looking for these edge contrasts. And what it's going to do is it's going to build a new layer based on that 50% gray, and it's going to make certain parts of that edge a little bit lighter and certain parts of the edge a little bit darker. And what we're doing is by converting the image to that 50% gray with just that edge tonality, is now we are getting rid of all the color information, absolutely no color information, and just retaining the texture. So in essence, we are keeping this. All right. Although this is a mask, in Photoshop, it will be an actual editable layer. All right. And because it's going to have the overlay blend mode, okay, it's going to allow us to really manipulate the texture independent of the color. Does that make sense? Have I explained that? Okay. Anybody got any questions about that? I know it's a little weird concept to wrap the heads around. All right. But once you see it in action, hopefully it'll click in. Okay. All right. So we'll be using this image just because it's, all right, it's got all these little markings. It's got all these little dust spots and everything that we want to be able to clean up. Okay. If we have enough time, I'll show you how it can be used like in a portrait setting as well. Okay. All right. So let's go back to Photoshop. And yeah, I don't know what I did to my Stream Deck here that give me 1 second. Scene 4 desktop. I don't know why it's going to someplace else. You know, if it's not one thing, it's another. Scene 4. Okay. And oh. I know why. I am missing a profile. Okay. Give me 1 second. You know, if it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all, right? Nope. Yeah, if looks like I might be out of luck with my draw. Maybe. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Let's see if I can very quickly rebuild this, because without these tools, it makes it hard for you guys to see what I am doing. Especially my little spotlight. Okay. Rename. Okay. Oops. Okay. Maybe we got it. All right. Spotlight. Nope. Don't get my spotlight. Ooh. Something happened. Okay. Scene for desktop. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. I think we got it. I think we got it. Yes. Oh. All right. Thanks. Okay. Where was I? All right. So, what we need to do is we need to clean this up. All right. Now, like I said, I'm going to be using this as a starting example, just to kind of introduce the fundamentals. And then if we have time, I'll actually do some work on a portrait, because that's where you really, see the benefits of this. Okay. So with frequency separation, what we need to do is we need to take that image and split it into two. All right, into two layers, so that one layer has just the color information and the other layer has just the texture information. Okay. So like I said, I have an action for it. And what I'm going to do is I have it so that it's going to step through every step so you can see the steps. All right. And if you're interested, I can probably email you the action if you don't have one already, or if you don't want to. All right. So what it's all right. So what it's doing is it's going to create two copies. And it's going to label one low frequency and the other one high frequency. All right. That's how this particular action is built. When I replicated it, it makes better sense to call one layer texture and the other layer color. All right. So the high frequency would be all the texture information. All right. So high frequency is anything that has a lot of the detail that creates our edges and our texture and the actual texture of the image. The low frequency is just color. All right. And the way it's typically done is for the color information, we want to remove any texture. So what we do is we apply a Gaussian blur. How much of a Gaussian blur you add, it's dependent on the type of image. But typically you just want to remove all detail. All right. Now, detail does not mean that, it's going to be one big blurry mess. We're still going to be able to tell that it's a camera. We're still going to be able to see the edges, but we're not going to be able to see a lot of the texture that would make up an image. So all the scratches, all the little specks tend to get blurred out. Okay. So in this case, it's stopping here and it's saying, okay, in the following dialog box, you need to dial in how much blur you want for the low frequency layer. Okay, so we're going to continue. And here is the Gaussian blur that's being applied. The action is set with a value of 8.5 by default. By default. Okay. You can change this, and I suggest you change it according to the type of image that you have. Some images require a little bit more blur, usually not. Some images require a little bit less, such as in this case, we can probably go with a little less simply because, this is a very plasticky, tech device. So there is not a lot of surface detail to begin with. The only surface detail on this are any imperfections on the surface, the scratches, the dust, the the crud that's accumulated in the corners. So I can probably get away with 5, or let's do 6, okay, and we hit OK. So this image now is our low frequency. Okay. Then it's going to go and apply a high frequency to the next. All right. Continue. All right. And let me just show you what that looks like. Okay. All right. And usually that's above that one. Okay. All right. Let's put that to normal. Okay. Now, you're probably just seeing a big gray square in the video. So let me go ahead and just zoom in here. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see that. All right. See the edges? All right. Actually, let me go ahead and zoom in really tight. Okay. We're almost pixel peeping here. All right. If you look, what we're looking at here is a neutral gray, 50% gray layer. And what creates the edge is, if you notice, on this side of the line is light, and on this side of the line is dark. Okay, see it here? Light on this side, dark on that side. It's that contrast that is creating the illusion of an edge. Okay, and we'll see it here as well. Light on this side, dark on this side. Okay, so it's that contrast of light and dark that makes us see that edge. Okay, all right. If we come over, all right, we'll see that there are some areas that now have a little bit of lighter color. All right. And we have, obviously a lot of noise. Okay, that kind of steps to the darker side of, of that neutral gray, all right? But all of this information is just texture. That's all it is, texture, all right? There is absolutely no color information in this, all right? And we're gonna put it on, what was it? It was on linear dodge, right? I think that's what it was. Let me just double check. Set current layer, frequency separation. Linear light. Okay, so linear light. Linear light. Oh, that's right. Yeah, linear light. Okay, so if we look at our blend modes, our layer blend modes, all right, which we discussed very recently. The first one is our darken. All right, let's see. The first group is our darken group. The second group is our lighten group. And the third group is our group that operates off of that 50% gray. Okay? So linear light allows that light to lighten and the dark to darken the underlying layer. Okay? All right. If I were to take, so I have the bottom layer, which is our color layer. I have it turned off. You can see that the eyeball's turned off. What I'm going to do, just for ha-has, is I'm going to put a color layer right underneath it. Okay? So you can see, let me line it up a little. Okay. You can see that even if we put a little bit of color underneath, it really doesn't do much because the underlying color makes no sense to the detail information that we have. Okay? It makes no sense. All right, it's just one solid color. But once we get some color behind it, all right, let me just get rid of that. I'm going to turn off the, actually, you know what? Let me make this easier. I'm going to call this texture. All right, and I'm going to call this color, just so you guys can keep track of what it is. So I turned the texture off. And this is my original. All right. So right now we're looking at the color layer. All right. This is the one that we applied some blur to. Okay. Now you're saying, well, I can see a lot of the texture there. Yes. What you are looking at is the texture that is created by the contrast of color, all right, which of course is determined by how it was lit. Okay, so we have in this case a white camera, and it's got this, you know, it's a Netgear. All right. So when we photographed it, we photographed not just a plain white. We photographed white with texture, white with shadow detail, white with highlight detail. That's what the camera sees, right? That's what the camera's going to record. But what we did is we are keeping the big information, the big texture information, like the word Netgear, okay? But if we look at the little detail where there were a lot of dust and scratches, you can see that the majority of them have been blurred out. Because of the Gaussian blur, it's kind of made it just fuzz, you know, blur out and blend into its neighboring pixels. Obviously, we have that one little lone spot because it's bigger, all right? And this is where the beauty of separation comes into play, okay? All right. Any question on how these two layers, how they're separated and what they do? All right, so the high frequency contains all our texture information. The low frequency contains all our color information and our big blocks of texture. All right, so no fine texture, just the big blocks. All right, so now we can say, okay, if I need to manipulate how this looks, we can manipulate it through their respective layers. So for example, if I wanted to get rid of these little spots, I can go to my texture layer, all right? And just for simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and use my AI, my little AI tool of the remove tool, the AI remove, all right, the newer one, okay? But make sure that where it says sample all layers, make sure that's turned off, okay? We do not want to have that underlying color layer influencing our texture layer, okay? So here, let me turn it on and I'll show you what I mean. So if I were to take and let's say just go there, right? You notice that now we got this big bright spot because what it did is it sampled from both layers and it's using both layers to rebuild that area in order to remove the spot, okay? We don't want the color layer influencing it. So let me go Control Z. If we turn that off, it's just going to now just sample from that texture layer, okay? So now if we go like this, there it is, okay? But now, what's left? Okay, what's left is that underlying color layer, all right? So if we turn this off, see that spot there? Okay. We need to go ahead and remove it from there as well. All right. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, this kind of seems a little silly. If I have to do both, all right, why split it? Right? Why split it? To be honest, I wouldn't do this kind of work in layer separation. All right. I would do this on a single layer ahead of time. All right, but because this is about layer separation and into the frequencies, you know, bear with me, okay? All right, so now we can go in and we can say, all right, there we go. Clean it up, do a little patchwork, okay? All right, but this isn't about spot removal, all right? Frequency separation is about fixing, removing, or adding something that is a little bit more complex. So for example, if I wanted to, let's say, change the color of the logo, all right, what I can do is I can go ahead and make a selection. I'm just going to do a very quick selection of the letter N here. All right. If I want to change, let's say I want to make this red, okay? I need to know exactly what I am manipulating. In this case, I want to manipulate the color. So I am going to go to the low frequency layer, all right, which is our color layer. All right, and now if I get a nice soft round brush, let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to go ahead and let's just pick a red here. Okay. That's pretty bright, huh? Okay, and then I'll get rid of my mask. Okay. The one thing you're going to notice that's different from, let's say, let's just create a new layer. Okay. And let me make another selection of the letter E here. Okay. If I wanted to change the color of the letter E, we're going to do the same color red. Okay. But instead of doing it with frequency separation, I'm just going to paint on this. Okay. You'll notice that there's a big difference. The letter E now blocks, all right, the texture. Okay. It looks like it's a sticker on it. So I says, well, that's not very good. I need, to make it look like it's part of the product, not necessarily something that got painted over. Okay, so what can we do? Well, we can try doing some kind of, blend mode. Let's see if we can get it, to blend. None of these. Oh, color, no. Luminosity, no. Hue, no, definitely not. Overlay, none of these are blending to the point. That's probably the closest that it gets to. But none of these come anywhere close to looking realistic, as if it's part of the product. Okay. Oh, well, we learned about blend modes, or blend if modes. Okay, let's see if maybe we can do a blend if. All right, so we'll split, and oh, not the current layer, the layer below. Blend if, no, it's still not looking very realistic. All right, it still looks like a sticker stuck on. All right, no matter what we do, we can't make it look real. All right. All right, hopefully that's coming across on the video for you guys. You see the difference? All right, with the letter N, we can see all the little spots. All right, we can see the dark edge where the shadow is and the highlight edge. Okay, all that information is retained because it is on a separate layer. See, if I turn off the texture layer, now it kind of looks like this, the letter E. All right, the letter E that was painted on. Okay. Once we turn the texture layer on, then it looks better. Of course, we can take that E and drop it below our texture, and now we have something. Now we have all that texture information showing up, okay? Because it's below our texture. Make sense? Did I lose anybody? Okay. All right, so now we can manipulate our color independent of our texture. okay? We can, of course, like I said, removing spots like this, I wouldn't do it in frequency separation. Can you do it? Absolutely. But there are better ways of doing it, okay? But you can see that we can do a very quick fix. Okay. All right. Where it comes into play a lot better is when we have things like this, where we have a surface that should be smooth, but for some reason doesn't look smooth because it's reflecting weird stuff. Maybe there's a flaw in the surface, okay? Now, mind you, I'm using a product, a manufactured item as an example here. But if we think about when we photograph, you know, let's say an animal or a person, all right, nobody's skin is perfectly flawless. Nobody's skin is perfectly smooth. All right, there are all kinds of little bumps and defects that, you know, we will need to correct. All right, and this will allow us to. So now we can come in and go, oh, well, that's terrible. All right, we can come into our color layer, and now with a brush, okay, soft round brush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the opacity, all right, the opacity, and I'm going to go from 100, I'm going to drop it down to maybe like 20%, 15, 20%, okay? The reason for this is I want to build up my tonality a little at a time. I don't want to put down a lot of color in one shot, okay? I want to have control over what it is that I'm painting, okay? Now, again, I want to reiterate here. Let me, hold on one second. Where's my chat? Where's my chat? Desktop. There we go. Hey, we got it. Okay. I want to reiterate, I'm using a pen tablet, So I have finer control over what I am doing. Okay. So it's going to be reflected when you see it on the screen. You can still do it with a mouse. Just realize that you're going to have better control if you use one of these. That's why I always kind of like really stress switching over to a tool like this if you really want to take control of your editing, because it just opens up a lot more that you can do. Okay. So I have a nice soft round brush. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And if I use the Alt or Option key, let's see, you'll note, oh, I lost something. What did I lose? I lost my desktop. What the heck? Ooh, that was weird. All right. Time to troubleshoot as soon as I end this Zoom chat. Okay. All right. Can you see? Okay. My brush. All right. You can see here the brush. Somebody had a question?
Yep.
Yes. Who? What's that? I'm sorry, I missed that. What?
These funny things. They're so funny.
All right. Hey, Bob. Bob, go ahead. Okay, thank you. All right, all right. I thought you had a question there for a second. All right, so the brush, soft round brush, and if you notice, I am laying down a little bit of color at a time and building it up, right? Okay, because that's what I want. I want a slow build up. Okay, so now, if you want to work non-destructively, I suggest you just put in a blank layer above it. Okay, just go to your layer panel and just click on the little plus symbol, and it's going to add a new blank layer. Okay, and paint on that. The Alt or Option key is going to change your cursor from the brush to a color picker. Okay. All right. So, and again, this is one thing that I've said in the past. Get into the habit of having your pen or your mouse in one hand and your second hand on the keyboard so that you can work simultaneously. All right. This allows you to press and hold the Alt key, Option key for your Mac people, click, all right, anywhere here on your image, and it's going to sample the color underneath that color picker, all right, and load it into your foreground color, all right? Now, obviously, this image is pretty much black and gray because that's the nature of the product, all right? But you'll see here, I can start laying down that color gray. Here, I can, darker gray. Here is that kind of brown, all right? But at 20% increments, okay? All right, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna zoom in here. I'm going to sample the color next to it, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm literally painting over those pixels, all right? 20% is a little bit too low. Let's go to 50%, okay? The shortcut key is if you use any of the number keys, it will jump to that percentage. So 5 will give you 50%. All right, so 5, and if we look up here, 50%, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build a little bit of a gradient here. All right, let me make it 30% because it's really throwing down a lot of pigment, okay? And if I want, I can create a little bit more of a highlight here. I can get rid of these areas. Okay. Actually, let me go ahead and turn off the texture layer. That might make it a little bit better. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm working on the color layer, and I'm smoothing out some of this underlying color information. All right. So in essence, I am rebuilding some of this texture. Okay. Now, I know it doesn't look like much right now. Okay. The other thing we can do is we can use our blur tool or our sharpen tool on these layers. I won't use the sharpen tool too much, but we can use the blur tool to kind of smooth out any of the brush texture that we are introducing. Okay. All right. I turn on the texture again, and we notice that, well, it really didn't do very much. And that's because, all right, if we turn this off, we still have that very bright texture information from our texture layer. All right. So what we need to do is we need to correct for that. We'll go to our, make sure you're on the texture layer. All right. Click on you can use the spot healing tool or the new remove tool, whichever one it makes sense to you. All right. And we're just going to come in and we're going to clean that up. Okay. And then once I turn on that information below, all right, we go to a texture. Up color. Oops. Wrong tool. Go back to my brush. All right. There. Let me zoom in a little bit. Spot. Okay. This was the before. This is the after. Before, after. Okay. And we can go ahead and, we can say, all right, well, it's not looking very good. Kind of rushing this. All right. So let's make it a little bit better. Okay. Go to our texture, clean that up. Okay. Now, just like we can sample from the color layer, we can also sample from the texture layer. All right. So in this case, we can see how see how this area kind of softened up. All right. We can take, like, for example, a clone stamp. I can sample from the texture out here and I can add it into this area here. All right. And rebuild any texture that gets destroyed from doing all that manipulation work. Okay. All right. Before, after, before, after. Okay. I know this is probably a bad example. So any questions on manipulating the two layers? Manipulating the texture layer, manipulating the color layer. All right. Any questions? All right. Let me pull up a picture of a person, because there's where you're really going to see, how we can really manipulate this information. Okay.
Doc, I have a question as you get into that.
Sure.
As I was watching this, it reminded me of an old book I have, 50 Fast Digital Techniques from 2001.
Okay.
Anyway, there was a technique in there to make watercolor wash ink replications, and it required doing the same similar things. You make two layers, one you fuzz out with the Gaussian blur,
Yeah.
And the other one, you did something when it was a blur, but it was a hard edge tool or something.
Yeah.
But one of
Okay.
the things I didn't like about it was that the ink part, quite often the lines look kind of jagged. Not anti-aliasing jagged, but the way it was doing it back then, how it
Right.
figured out. And it looks like this could do it and have the lines look a lot more smoother. Is that, am I thinking the right way on that?
Yeah. So what you were looking at was something that was there, steps that were used to manipulate a photo to look more like a painting. In
Right.
this case, we're trying to preserve the look of the photo.
Okay.
So yeah, it's going to utilize slightly different techniques. But in essence, if we think about like some of those actions that will take a, let's say, a photograph to make it look like an oil painting. All right, what they're doing is they're taking the basic structure of the original photograph. They're simplifying it a lot by adding blur to it to get rid of all the fine details, because in a painting you would not have fine texture detail. You just have blocks of color, blocks of light and dark. Okay, where the texture comes in for a painting is in the actual brushwork.
Right.
Okay, so in an action that mimics like an oil painting, what they got to do is they have to introduce a new texture that kind of gives the illusion of paint strokes. So what they'll do is they'll take an actual texture layer that has, somebody photographed a layer where somebody took paint strokes, okay, and they'll extract just the texture part, all right, which is that based on that 50% gray, and apply it to the photograph. Okay, so in essence, you end up with a photograph that has the original texture layer that creates all the information that makes this a photograph. Simplify it by removing all the fine detail and adding another texture layer that has the brush information. So you have texture layer, and then the color layer. All right. In essence, anytime you do any kind of texture overlay, if you've ever worked with texture overlays, it's the same exact principle, except we're not going into the frequency separation. We're just adding a layer on top of everything else. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to, let's see, where's my playback options? I'm just going to keep that regular. Frequency separation, go ahead and play. Continue. I'm going to keep it at the default. Continue. Okay. And here we have our high frequency. Let's rename that to texture. And our low frequency, which is our color. Okay. So I'm just going to turn off that bottom layer. So if we turn off the texture layer, you can see that we have a blurred image. Okay. And if we turn off the color layer, we see we have all the detail information. Okay. All right. So this is where some of the magic of frequency separation comes into play, because now we can look at things like wrinkles, all right, if we turn off the texture information and we look at, let's say, just for simplicity, let's go for this wrinkle, okay? You have a client that says, oh, I don't like these wrinkles on the front of my blouse or the shirt or whatever. Can you remove them? Now you can, okay? So, what makes a wrinkle? Trick question. See who can answer it. What creates this wrinkle? Anybody? Come on, you guys, this is an easy question.
Well, what you said about the 50%, the thing, like the one you're looking at, the darker to the left of that's
Awesome.
the 50%, and the other one is the other side.
Awesome. Yes. But in this particular case, we're not using the 50% gray as our measure. What we have, though, is our true tone color of the shirt. What's our true tone color of the shirt? All right. It's red. Okay. We have a red shirt. We have the true tone. Anything darker than is a shadow to the true tone color, and anything lighter than is the highlight of that true tone color. So what creates that wrinkle is that light coming across, lighting one side, making it brighter, and throwing the opposite side in shadow, making it darker. Okay? So if we wanted to remove that wrinkle, what would we need to do? Well, we can lighten the shadow side and we can darken the lighter side, right? Okay, so we'll pick a nice soft round brush. Okay, we are going to go, let's see. Yeah, we'll keep it at like 30%. Okay, let me zoom in here a little bit. Okay, I'm going to turn the texture layer back on just so you see what it looks like. All right, remember that? Okay, now I'm going to create a new layer, new blank layer, because I want to work destructively. Okay. And I'm going to now sample a color that's lighter than my dark. Okay, so alter option, click, right? And we're going to come in here and we're just going to lighten that up a little bit. All right, and then on the light side, I want to pick something that's a little bit darker. And we're going to go in and we're going to just lighten that up. Okay. Now you'll be looking at it and go, oh, that looks terrible. Let's turn the texture layer back on. Okay. Now watch this. This is after, before, after, before, after. Ooh, magic. Photoshop ironing board. Okay. All right. So now you know how to get rid of wrinkles on a shirt. Okay. What wrinkles do you want to remove? Well, you want to remove things that kind of visually interfere. You don't want anything that distracts you, okay? So if you have wrinkles in a particular piece of clothing that are a little bit, too obnoxious, well, we can knock them down, all right? And now how much can we knock down? Well, here's the thing. We are working on the color layer here, but directly above that is a texture layer that contains what? Lights and darks, right? Part of the lights and darks that it also maintains is the lights and darks that create that crease, that wrinkle, that wave in the fabric. All right. So you can only take it so far on the color layer, all right, to remove something before you need to go into the texture layer to finish it up. But if we understand that, we can say, okay, well, you know what? I can probably just knock down, not completely remove, but seriously knock down some of these wrinkles. All right, so we're not completely ironing the shirt flat because obviously, you know, nobody's going to photograph completely with a flat shirt. That just doesn't make any sense. But if there are, you know, really strong highlights that are getting in the way visually, and for some reason, you know, your curves adjustment layers, your levels adjustments, you know, all these other layers are just starting to, you know, get too complicated, and no matter what you try, you really just can't knock it down because we're looking at a very, very small. Let me see if I can explain this. All right. So your curves adjustment layer goes from 100% black to 100% white, correct? But if we look at the shadow and the highlight information for these wrinkles, they are a very, very minuscule selection on that curves adjustment. Too small to be able to use it effectively to just target those areas. All right, that's why trying to remove wrinkles using curves adjustment, it's almost impossible. Okay, almost impossible, not quite. This is a little bit easier because now we can say, okay, well, this color information that's very bright red, if I just take a brush, all right, let me turn off that texture layer. If we take a soft round brush and, you know, 20%, 30% opacity, and just brush over it with a contrasting color or a darker color, okay, we can probably get rid of that wrinkle to the point where it's not as obvious, okay? Make sense? Okay. So now, how else can we color correct? Well, look at these bags under my eyes. All right. They're a little bit on the dark side. If we take off the texture information, all right, let me zoom in here. We can see what creates these bags under the eyes: light and shadow, right? Light and shadow. My skin tone is the true tone color. That's what we want to apply. So I will sample the skin tone. And because I'm using an opacity on my brush, that might be a little bit too much. Let's go for 10%. All right. There we go. Line that up, line that up. Okay, now remember, the goal is to correct. The goal is to fix, not eliminate characteristics that make a person who they are. All right. So while I may appreciate somebody going in and removing bags under the eyes, it's not going to make me look like who I am. All right. So there it is. That's after, before, after, before, after. Okay? So now we can color correct certain areas of a person's skin tone and minimize certain aspects of their features. All right. For example, if somebody has, red patches to their skin and you want to even out their skin a little bit more, you just take their natural skin color and then you just paint right over their the areas that are red, and it fixes it right up. Okay. So if I turn off that texture layer, you can see, and I'm not even doing a good job. You can see it's a little streaky. But it doesn't matter because once I turn on that texture layer, you really can't tell. That texture layer just, there's a reason why that underlying layer is, can be so soft and blurry. It's because it's just color information. All right. There's no texture. Okay. Now, one word of warning. If you apply too much blur to that color layer, you will get some haloing around your edges. So you have to be careful. You can't push the limit. Okay. But like anything else, okay, we can manipulate colors with this. So if I want to, say, for example, give myself blue eyes. Let's go for blue eyes, shall we? Oh, they're looking more purple than anything. Let's go more blue. Let's go, there we go. I don't look good with blue eyes, do I? Let's go with a darker blue. Make my brush a little, oops, smaller. Paint in some variation. All right, you have to get a little creative here. All right. That's probably way too blue. That's not a very natural looking blue, is it? Probably should pick like red or something. Okay, let's go darker towards the top. There we go. Whoa, look at that. Okay. That's what I look like with blue eyes. All right. Gloria, you are a portrait photographer. If somebody's mascara needs a little bit of cleanup, this is how you would do it. If somebody's makeup needs a little cleanup, this is how you would do it. All right. Now, one of the problems, all right, this particular image, of course, it's my image. I took it, so there are no highlights. All right. But sometimes you will have, a very contrasty highlight on, somebody's forehead, the tip of the nose, maybe, the high parts of the cheek that just a little bit blown out. Actually, can I find something like that? Let me see if I can find something like that. Of course, I cannot. Let me see. Do I have anything? Probably not. My grandkids here. Oh, there we go. Maybe here. Nah, that's probably not the best one. I want to see if I can find something with a really obvious. Oh, here we go. This one here has a very obvious highlight. There we go. We'll use that as an example. So Control E into Photoshop, frequency separation action. Go ahead. We're going to keep that. We'll keep that. Okay. Now we have this highlight on the top of the forehead. Okay. We have our high frequency, which is our texture. Okay. And you can see that there is bright spots in the texture layer that we'll need to pay attention to. We also have a hot spot in our color layer that we'll need to pay attention to. Okay. So let's do the texture first. Okay. Now we can go ahead and use our spot healing or our, whatever method works best. Okay. But you have to be careful because sometimes it's not going to replace it with the appropriate texture. All right. So let me back that up. I'm going to go with a clone stamp tool because now I can purposely select from an adjacent area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sample from the area next to it and just go ahead and paint in to these areas that create our highlight and our shadow for that really hard specular highlight. Okay, so now, all right, in the texture layer, I have removed that specular highlight. Okay, see it's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's still there because it's on our color layer. All right, so we're going to go to our color layer. Let me zoom in. Okay. Soft round brush. Make sure your low frequency or your color layer is selected. All right. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. I have my opacity. Let's put my opacity at 50%. Okay. Again, I'm going to select from the area surrounding it because I want to match as closely to the area around it. So using the Alt option, let's go to 30%. 50% is a little bit too high. There we go. Okay. Highlight gone, right? Let's turn the texture layer. And if we zoom in, it looks 100% natural. Okay, 100% natural.
While you're in there, Duck, can you do me a favor and get rid of that spotlight?
Get rid of the spotlight? Ooh, good question. All right. Let's see. Let's make this a little bit larger. All right. All right, it's gone there, right? So let's just, okay. So now we go to the high frequency, all right? And we can see that the high frequency just has that really weird, it's not quite a bright, intense, you know, what you would think of as the light, but that kind of like halo effect around the light is there. So again, gonna use our clone stamp. All right, make sure the high frequency layer is selected. I'll make this a little bit larger, and I'm just going to, let's go at 100%, see what that gives us. And we are going to go ahead and just sample from around it. That looks pretty good, right? Okay, moment of truth. Well, I don't know how good that looks, but yeah, you can remove a spotlight. You just have a weird spot of color. Okay.
Well, I just started this project. I'm restoring 50-year-old rock concert negatives. I got about half of them back, but I was just looking at one last night and go, boy, that's a bright light I'd like to get rid of.
Well, maybe not get rid of, but maybe tone it down a little bit. How's
Yeah,
that?
what that does right there, it just makes it a whole lot, you know, it's not as distractive as it seemed like it was before.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you have to, obviously, anything you do to an image, you have to weigh a lot of factors, you know, but, you know, hopefully this is proof. Yeah, you can, you know. So keep in mind, this is great for color manipulation without really destroying any of the texture information. You know, you can say, okay, I'm gonna take, let's take the lasso tool, and we're just gonna go around here. And I'm gonna take a brush. I'm on my color layer, and let's pick a blue color and see what that does. Oh, let's increase it to 100%. Yeah, not very good. We would need to kind of like, oh, I know what we can do. Let's add a curves adjustment, and we'll go to our blue layer, and we'll increase our blue, take our red high, take our red layer, okay, and our green layer, and blue layer. Let's see if we can increase the blue, red layer. I don't know. I mean, it's sloppy, but you can see, oops, you can see how, you know, we can definitely manipulate some of the item, some of the, what you call it, edges. Let's see, feather, contrast. Okay. Any questions on utilizing frequency separation to manipulate the texture and the color independently? No. All right, let's say we want to remove wrinkles. Okay, if you want to remove wrinkles, again, you know, I don't know if you want to remove them as opposed to maybe just reduce them. Okay, so on the color layer, all right, sample. Oh, too hard, too hard, too hard. Let's reduce it 50%. Just paint, 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 paint. All right. Actually, let me turn off that texture layer so you guys can see what I'm doing. Just sample. Do a lot of sampling of the area, all right? Otherwise, it kind of tends to look a little bit too fake. All right. You want it to make it look as natural as possible. All right, so always be sampling. Sample, sample, sample. Okay. If you want to minimize it, you can use it for like dodging and burning. All right. If you want to minimize something, what do? We lighten the shadow side and darken the highlight side. Okay. There we go. Before, after, before, after. If you want to completely remove it, what do? We go to our texture layer, switch over to the clone stamp tool. All right, because I think the clone stamp tool does a better job. Sample next to it, and then just remember, sample, sample, sample. All right, until it's completely gone. There you go. Before. Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Wow, I look so freaky with blue eyes. I'm not used to that.
We down at an optometrist in the morning.
Yeah.
I have a question about this, and again, as it relates to this 50-year-old negative restoration project I have going. I'm thinking with running this action on the things I'm working on help with. Because one of the things I'm noticing with these things is, well, some of the batches is the haven't been kind to them. You know, they got scratched up over the 50 years. So a lot of what the work is, you know, taking out those those little pop marks and scratch marks. And another thing for a specific one, I've got a picture of Ozzy Osbourne, and the way the flash is, it looks like he's got a white part in his hair that's about an inch wide.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just
to take that down a bit, and I was thinking maybe this might be something to have ready to go on those kind of images.
Absolutely. So on the color layer where you see that bright center part,
Yeah.
take whatever color hair is right adjacent to it and bring it in.
Yeah.
And you probably don't even have to touch the texture layer at all.
Yeah. Okay.
So, all right. Any other questions?
I asked a question earlier about whether this would be good for water. You know, well, I have two things related. I asked before about doing watercolor ink from photographs. And then the other thing that I wanted to do or I've done on playing around with the cheap graphic things, is how to take an image and say turn it into a Sin City. Have you ever seen that movie?
Oh,
Sin
yeah,
City?
yeah.
How to turn into what you see every so often I'll turn a photo into this black and white with some red running through it.
Right.
Would something like this with textures lend itself to that if you're pushing some of the percentages for what you were trying to do?
For a Sin City look, probably not. That's a slightly different technique. If we really start analyzing the Sin City look, the movie, it's designed to replicate the comic book. All right.
Right.
Frank Miller was the artist behind the Sin City comic books. And he had a very strong graphic style where he used heavy blacks for the shadows. And he used pure white for, really strong accent pieces. Like, for example, if you notice this, the glasses were just pure white against a lot of black. In order to get that look, what you have to do is you really have to push the grays into the blacks or into the whites, depending on the look you want to go for. All right. So what it's literally doing is it's exaggerating the contrast between black and white. It's taking all those gray tones and pushing it either to the black or to the white in order to best illustrate what it is that it's trying to replicate. So, for example, the trench coat. Let's say the trench coat is that khaki brown. All right. If you just take all of that brown and push it into black, you're just going to get a black trench coat with no details. All the highlights of the wrinkles are going to be gone. So you take parts of that and you push it to the white in order to preserve the whatchamacallit, the folds in the clothing. All right. But before you can get to that, you have to understand that they also videoed, or they filmed that in extreme contrast to start with. Okay, they used reflective tape a lot in order to blow out the highlights into pure white. So there's a lot of prep work that went into getting that look. So it's not like you can take any ordinary image and convert it into that Sin City look. Okay, and then of course they applied very minimal spot color, within that. All right, so for example, Frank Miller, anytime there was any kind of bloodshed, if he wanted to really accentuate it, everything would be black and white, except for the blood, which would be red. Okay, the bad guy, he colored him yellow. All right, this guy was just a walking disease. So he used the color yellow to illustrate that. All right, so, yeah. If you wanted to take a normal photograph and convert it to that, you would need to do a lot of heavy lifting with manipulating the tones to get them to look the way you want. So you would do a lot of dodging and burning to get that look. All right. Let me see if I can.
Don't have to go into what I was. That part of the question, there's an app out there called CamArt, I believe, and it has actually something called the Marv filter. And that's
yeah.
You just throw it in, hit it with the Marv filter, and you get this. And in the back of my mind, that one and all these other ones, I think, well, there must be a way to do that in Photoshop, But and that's one.
There is, and to be honest, You'll probably get better results doing it manually in Photoshop than just passing it through a generic filter, because that generic filter may not necessarily give you that look that you need.
And really, while you're doing it, I mentioned earlier the watercolor wash, and this is something I had meant to do some time back, and maybe we could turn this into a Photoshop class, but this watercolor technique thing from 2001, I've used that a lot to make watercolor inks, and I was always thinking it'd be nice to show you and say, how do we do this now in 2023?
Right. Yeah, we can, yeah, I'll definitely look into it. All right, so just to give you kind of like a quick idea of what I'm talking about, needing to manipulate certain aspects of it. All right, so what I did is, generic photograph, all right? Not a lot of contrast to start off with because it was an overcast day. So you can see there aren't very many heavy shadows to begin with. All right. So once I convert it to black and white and I start manipulating the colors, so the red of the brick, I try to push it to the dark side. All right. And then I apply a curves adjustment to see if I can get a little bit more separation. If I'm not careful, all right, I'm not going to get that Sin City look, okay? You can definitely see like up here in this little cupola, all right, all those light tones are gone. Okay, they completely vanish once I bring it from the light gray into the white. Okay, because you can see actually on my curves adjustment, what I've done is I've pushed my white point to say anything from 50% gray to white, I want it to be white. That falls well within that range. So it's going to say, all right, I need it to go to white. But when we do that, it doesn't look good. So how do we fix that? All right, I need to go into the image. All right, and I will need to take a brush. And with a brush, I will need to go ahead and add some kind of darkness so that it pushes it beyond that 50% gray. All right. So you can do this by dodging and burning. You can do this like I'm doing just by painting dark. All right, and I'm just being kind of like very, very haphazard here because I don't want to just take up too much time. But you get the gist. So now when I turn on that curves adjustment, we can see now we have some semblance of the top of that. Okay. So that's where I say you would need to go in and do a lot of handwork in order to manipulate the tones to where you want them to go.
Thanks.
So, okay. All right. Any other questions? I'll go ahead and on getting rid of my eyebrows here. All right. So you can do all kinds of, you can do facelifts, you can do all kinds of goofy stuff.
Doc, I was going to ask you, you didn't have a red nose at the beginning.
Nope.
But I was going to ask you how you got the red tint in the glasses, because it looks like that was added.
No, I didn't do anything to the glasses. I just did it to the nose.
Okay.
So, boom, boom. Oops. I don't know what I'm sampling here. There we go.
I don't know if it's just me, but your voice got very electronically synthesized.
Oh, I think it was you.
Okay.
Oh no, it's my cyborg coming through. AI is here. I am not real. All right. Okay, so you can see that, you know, with frequency separation, there's a lot you can do with manipulating an existing image. You can add things, you can remove things, all kinds of good stuff. Okay. Any questions on anything we covered?
So how you group this process to print it? How do you do this? Because you have this.
To print, well, so if you're going to want to come back into this file and make corrections and re-edit it, I normally do not collapse my layers into a single layer. I usually keep all my layers that I use to build a particular edit. Okay, so once I'm happy with the way it looks, all right, I just save. Okay, I don't want to save. Yeah, it's all right. What the hell? I'll save. Save. Should have made a copy. And if we go back to Lightroom, where am I? There we go. There we go. From Lightroom, I just go ahead and export to, you know, my JPEG and send that off to the printer.
Yes. Oh, okay.
Or a TIFF file or whatever it is you want. So, wow. No eyebrows and blue eyes. I gotta love it. Okay. All right. Anybody else got any questions? Hopefully I didn't make this too complicated for you guys. I know it's a pretty complicated topic. Or we're getting into the weeds here. Okay. All right. So I say play around with it. Download a frequency separation action. If you're interested, I can send you the one that I got here.
Yes, please.
Okay. I think it's small enough to be able to be emailed out, so I'll email it. You know how to add presets or actions to Photoshop? No? Okay. So once you have an action, what I normally do, all right, what I normally do, oops, what I want. I have a, on a secondary drive, I got multiple drives. I have a folder called Adobe Assets, okay? And in that Adobe Assets folder, you can see I have Lightroom stuff and I have Photoshop stuff, okay? And in particular, I have this folder called Photoshop Actions, okay? Now, if you notice, mine looks a little bit different because I got creative and I put my own custom icon on it, but it doesn't matter. It could, you know, if yours looks like this, it's the same thing. All right, Photoshop actions. When you find an action that you like, go ahead and save it here. Okay, save it here. That way you always have access to it no matter what happens in Photoshop. Okay, if you need to, for some reason, reload Photoshop, Photoshop crashes, you got to wipe it out, reload it. You're not losing all your actions. You're not losing your textures. You're not losing your brushes, the custom stuff. Not the stuff that comes with Photoshop, but the custom stuff. Brushes that you make, patterns that you make, actions that you make. All right, save them in a separate folder. All right. Once you know where that folder lies, you just come to your actions tab. All right. Okay. And if you don't see it here, go to window, make sure actions is checked. Okay. And in the in that panel in the upper right, you're going to see the little hamburger menu icon. Okay. You're going to come down to where it says load action, about halfway down. Load action. Load action. Okay, and it's going to pop up this little Finder window. Okay, so if you are a Mac, it'll be your Finder. If you are on PC, it will be your Explorer window. Okay, all you have to do is navigate to where you have your actions. So I go to my assets, Photoshop actions, and then I just scroll down to whatever action that I want to install. Okay. All right. Oh, here's one, Pix Imperfect frequency separation, and then hit load. All right. Hit load, and that's it. It will be right there. Okay. All right. So 8-bit, 16-bit. Okay. All right. So we're in 16-bit. So here, let me delete that. Here's my background. Hit the action button. There it is. There's my blur. Hit OK. And voila. There's my high frequency and my low frequency. Okay. Now, unfortunately, I did something to the action that I created. I don't know what I did, but I don't use the word high frequency and low frequency. I use the more colloquial texture and color because it makes more sense to me, right? Okay.
But it's good to know if high frequency is texture.
Correct.
It's good to know those. Yeah.
Yeah.
and low
So that's your
color.
high texture and your low, high frequency, low frequency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frequency. Yes.
All right. Okay. So I will. What I'll actually do is I'll probably email them out tomorrow. I want to take a few minutes and figure out what the heck I did with mine, because mine was working perfectly earlier today. I don't know what the heck I did. All right, so I'm going to fix it. I'll probably just rewrite it, and I'll email you that, because it will email it with the texture color. Okay. All right, so Gloria wants it. Anybody else want it? Anybody else want it? Alan? Okay. Oh, you guys are the only ones left. Everybody else took off. Okay. Well, I'll make it available to whoever wants it. All right, guys, that's pretty much it for today. I'm sorry I was having so many. Oops, what the heck? There we go. Today was one of those days, between the fly and
The fly is gone.
it's gone. It hasn't bothered me like half an hour, 45 minutes or so. Between the fly, being hot in here and all sweaty, and then this going wrong. And I don't know what the heck I did with my Stream Deck switcher. It wasn't switching properly.
Oh.
It's one of those days.
So about the drones, is going to be next Wednesday?
Next Wednesday from 5 to 9. So 5 o'clock, everybody comes in, a little bit of a social hour, get to say hello, get acquainted with everybody. And then the workshop actually starts at 6 o'clock. They're going to go over everything you need to know about drones. What they are, what they do, what the laws are in regards to flying drones commercially, as compared to just as a hobby. What's required to get your license, and they'll touch on how to figure out where you can and where you can't fly, because sometimes it's not very clear. Obviously, you can't fly it over highly populated areas. So, anything where there is a crowd, you can't fly over the crowd, for example. My buddy, he, in the past, he's used drones for shooting weddings. So what he does is he flies them in the periphery of the crowd. So he never has that aircraft over anybody below that aircraft. So if something should happen, and if it falls, it's going to fall on the lawn and not on grandma. Okay? And depending on how things go, they said they're going to allow people to actually manipulate some of the drones. They have a couple of drones that will be on hand. So, they'll be right next to you. They'll say, okay, this is up, down, left, right, blah, 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 blah. So you can actually take one of their drones out for a little bit of a test drive to see if this is something that you even want to, pursue. Because the drones nowadays have gotten so super easy to use. It's ridiculous. All right. And then the plan is at the end, because one of the presenters is actually, he's a filmographer. He's worked on television shows. He's worked in movies. He's done a lot of video production for commercials. He's actually going to do a short little demonstration on how you can use it for video work in a like a lifestyle shoot. So he's got plans to have a model there that's going to act out a little scene, and they're going to use the drones to film it, and you'll actually get to see what a video production using a drone looks like. The other presenter he's a architectural photographer, award-winning architectural photographer. He's photographed all over the state of Connecticut, probably the tri-state area, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York. His work has been in a ton of architectural magazines, and he uses it for aerial photography, overlooking the property. All right. If you go the Hartford Hospital Amphitheater in Bridgeport, if you look on the website and you see some of the overhead shots on the website, those are his. All right. And if you look closely, you might see me in the crowd there too, because I assisted him on that particular photo shoot, and it was so cool, But yeah, so he uses it for still photography. The other guy uses it for video work. So you're going to get to see both sides of the coin, you know. So
That'll be nice. So I'm going to, so I have to go to a link to register.
yeah, so ctppa .com, right? Yeah, I think .com, not .org. ctppa.com. At the top, you'll see a little menu that says events. Click on that and you'll see it.
Okay.
It's $20,
Yeah.
you know, and it's in Middletown. All right. It's going to be at his studio. All right, Alan, take care.
Thank you.
All righty, Gloria. Always a pleasure.
Okay.
We will see you all next week.
Next week.
Next week.
Yes.
All right. Take care.
For watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.